is 867. The political landscape in the Iranian deserts is fractured, defined by the slow decay of the Abbasid Caliphate and the rise of ambitious local dynasties. Among them is the SUFFARID dynasty, led by Emir Yaqub ibn al-Layth al-Saffar, a self-made ruler with a brilliant mind for warfare, not born into nobility, but forged through discipline, ambition, and the sword. To secure the future of his dynasty, Yaqub cemented the Saffarids' identity around warfare itself. Their earliest traditions formalized discipline, strategy, and the art of command, a legacy that would define the family for generations. Yaqub devoted his own life to the martial path, embracing a chivalric code that placed him at the front of every battle, and to ensure that legacy endured, he arranged political marriages to secure heirs and preserve the Saffarid line. As Yaqub's ambitions grew, he turned his attention to the Taharid kingdom, launching an offensive campaign to seize a substantial portion of their lands. He secured mercenary support and raised his full army, assembling every available soldier and hired blade for the coming conquest. The Saffarid march north brought Yaqub to the gates of Abiz, a key Taharid bastion. The fortress was surrounded and the siege of Abiz began. Meanwhile, the Taharid response surged from Kashmar. Their army, greater in number than Yaqub's, advanced southeast towards the encircled stronghold. The fate of the siege and the opening phase of the war now hung on the approaching clash between the two armies. Scouts soon brought alarming news. The main Taharid army was marching straight towards Abiz. Outnumbered and unwilling to be caught on level ground, Yaqub executed a bold maneuver. He pulled his forces back towards the rugged mountains of Barandud. Yet the Tahirids refused to be baited. Scouts brought word to their commanders that Yaqub had withdrawn into the fastness of Barandud, and so they shifted their strategy. The enemy army broke eastward, then curled north and down through the Duchy of Herat in a sweeping maneuver that completely evaded the Saffarid position. Their intention was unmistakable: abandon the mountain chase and drive straight for the capital fortress of Zaraj, hoping to force Yaqub into a desperate response. The Saffarids had nearly completed the siege of Zaraj, their engines battering the walls and their forces focused entirely on the capital. Unbeknownst to them, Yaqub was moving swiftly south, racing to intercept before the city could fall. The clash that was brewing would be brutal but decisive, a battle that would shape the destiny of the Saffarid dynasty. At Zaraj, the Taharid siege lines collapsed into chaos as Yaqub's forces struck with overwhelming force. Trapped between the city's defenses and the Saffarid counterattack, the Taharid army was shattered. Over 2,000 fell where they stood, their formations crumbling as survivors fled the field. Zaraj was secure, and Yaqub's triumph was absolute. But even with Zaraj secure, the war was far from over. Following the triumph at Zaraj, Yaqub advanced north, beginning a series of steady sieges against Taharid strongholds. These operations unfolded with little resistance, progressing methodically as Saffarid forces tightened their grip on the region. The Taharids advanced on Cain, hoping to regain the momentum they had lost. Instead, they were driven back in a crushing defeat, solidifying yet another Saffarid victory. But the Taharid advance broke on at Cain. The Saffarids moved straight for the heart of the enemy realm. The siege of Nishapur followed, a slow suffocation of the Taharid capital. When the city finally fell, so too did the war. The Taharid state had been decisively defeated. With the Taharids defeated, Yaqub looked east to the small Shadam of Gharid. But as soon as the war began, the Samanids stepped in, absorbing Gharid into their realm, strengthening the enemy forces by nearly 4 times the original number. It was the spark that set off almost 10 years of unbroken war, a grinding struggle with no peace in sight. The storm at Darmashan, the Samanids hurled their entire might against Yaqub, their ranks swelling across the battlefield. Despite his discipline and command, the Saffarids were driven back. Darmashan marked Yaqub's first defeat, a bitter blow at the dawn of a long and unforgiving campaign. After the defeat at Darmashan, the Samanids took the initiative, marching on Zaraj to besiege the Saffarid capital. Yaqub quickly regrouped and met them in battle. The clash would decide the fate of the realm. In the end, the Saffarids prevailed, shattering the Samanid army and securing their city. With the Samanids in retreat, Yaqub turned northeast, moving into the Ghurid lands and seizing the Casus Belli provinces temporarily uncontested. While campaigning in Ghurid, a peasant revolt threatened the capital. Yaqub paused his conquest, returned, and swiftly crushed the uprising. Amid the lingering unrest within the Saffarid lands, the Haratian ruler Sheikh Abd al-Rahim seized the opportunity and declared war for the Emirate of Herat. Several clashes would follow across the region. The Saffarid army faces the Samanids first at Zemindawar and later at Darmashan. defeating them and keeping their forces from intervening while attention turned to other conflicts. At Cain, the army met the forces of Herat, routing them and capturing Sheikh Abd al-Rahim to secure the emirate of Herat. A final engagement at Bakars crushed the remaining peasant uprising, ending the revolt. With these wars concluded, Yaqub could finally focus entirely on the conquest of the Shadam of Grid. Having lost nearly 1,000 soldiers, Yaqub bolstered his forces with mercenaries, shoring up his army for the continuing war against the Samanids. For several months, the Saffarid forces methodically besieged the lands of Grid, facing little resistance. But as the siege of Karf neared its conclusion, a reinforced Samanid army appeared from the northwest, moving to retake the castle at Gur and threatening to reverse Yaqub's gains. The Samanids moved northeast to engage the Saffarids after reclaiming Gur. The ensuing battle was a decisive triumph for Yaqub, with over 4,000 enemy troops killed or wounded, and their army moving in retreat. Yaqub returned southwest to retake the castle of Gur. While besieging Gur, scouts reported the enemy moving on Upper Gur. Upon the siege's completion, he briefly resupplied his army and then marched northeast for the second battle of Upper Gur. There, the Samanids held the advantage. They fielded nearly 1,000 more soldiers with additional men-at-arms and superior counters to the Suffarid forces. Yet, through strategy and resolve, Yaqub led his army to a decisive victory, overcoming the overwhelming odds and securing the battlefield once more. That night, as Yaqub retired to rest, danger lingered even beyond the battlefield. A subtle movement beneath his blankets revealed a snake, a silent attempt on his life. Undeterred, Yaqub resumed his campaign, but the trials of Upper Gur were far from over. While resupplying his army in the region, he was caught off guard by a sudden Samanid counterattack, setting the stage for a brutal third battle that would test his leadership like never before. This time, the Samanids held every advantage. Fresher troops, superior counters, and the element of surprise. The clash that followed was fierce, but the imbalance was undeniable. After a hard-fought struggle, Yaqub was forced to withdraw, retreating back into Saffarid territory to regroup and rebuild his battered forces. After nearly a month spent rebuilding his shattered ranks, Yaqub returned to the land of Ghurid to reclaim its fortresses once more. His determination had hardened. This war had to be won. Nearly a decade of conflict had stretched the realm thin, and Yaqub knew that failure here would invite the gaze of stronger empires, circling his borders like hungry wolves. Determined to finish the war, Yaqub seized the castle in the province of Gur, then pushed northeast to reclaim Upper Gur. There he intercepted a small Samanid reinforcement force, roughly 100 men, and slaughtered them to the last, ensuring no aid would reach the defenders. To ease the strain on supplies, Yaqub divided his army. One commander remained to continue the siege of Upper Gur, while Yaqub led the other half into the mountains of Mandesh. But the Samanids were not finished. A smaller column, marching up from Saffarid territory, attempted a desperate strike against Yaqub's position in the mountains. The attack collapsed almost immediately. Yaqub's forces routed them and drove the survivors back toward the Samanid heartland to regroup. With Upper Gur once again under Saffarid control, Yaqub pulled his two detachments together, forging them back into a single, unified army. The time had come to end the war. From the highlands of Gur, he marched southeast into the rugged mountains of Til, where the Samanid had rallied one last formidable army. What followed was a brutal clash in the high passes. Blades rang across the mountainsides as Yaqub hurled his men against an enemy that still held every material advantage. But strategy beat strength, and by day's end, the Samanid lines had shattered. The survivors fled, beaten back towards the heartland of their own king. That victory marked the end of nearly 10 relentless years of war. The Shadam of Gur was finally won. The Samanid, once confident in their superior armies and resources, had been humbled by Yaqub's relentless will and battlefield mastery. Against overwhelming odds, he had proven himself one of the most formidable commanders of his age, outsmarting larger armies, outmaneuvering better equipped foes, and emerging victorious every time it truly mattered.